Picture this for a second. You are the Los Angeles Dodgers. Not just any baseball team. The Los Angeles Dodgers, the defending back-to-back World Series champions. The team with the best record in Major League Baseball. The team featuring Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Blake Snell, and enough all-stars to fill an entire roster by themselves. Normally, teams like that play in cathedrals, massive stadiums, 40,000 people, 50,000 people, national television lights, historic ballparks packed with fans. But on this night, everything felt different. Because the Dodgers weren't walking into Dodger Stadium. They weren't walking into Yankee Stadium. They weren't walking into Fenway Park. They weren't even walking into Petco Park. Instead, they were heading into the smallest stadium in all of Major League Baseball, a ballpark that wasn't originally built for MLB at all. A stadium that holds barely 14,000 people. A place that feels more like AAA baseball than the biggest stage in the sport. And before the night was over, Shohei Ohtani would do something so ridiculous that fans inside the building couldn't stop talking about it. Commentators couldn't stop replaying it. Even opposing players stood and watched, because Ohtani didn't just hit a home run. He practically launched a baseball into another zip code. 432 feet. One of the longest home runs of his season, in the smallest stadium in Major League Baseball. But here's the crazy thing. That wasn't even the only story. The Dodgers piled up 17 hits. The Athletics fought harder than anyone expected. A returning star made an emotional comeback. And Dave Roberts quietly moved within touching distance of baseball history. By the end of the night, what started as a routine Monday game had transformed into one of the most entertaining Dodgers games of the entire season. And the strangest part? For a while, it looked like the Dodgers might actually lose. Let's go back to the beginning, because before Ohtani's monster blast, before the standing ovations, before the headlines, there was a stadium, and everybody was talking about it. The Athletics are still playing their temporary home games in Sacramento. It's one of the most unusual situations baseball has seen in decades. The franchise is between homes, waiting for its future move. And in the meantime, Major League Baseball is being played inside a park originally designed for AAA baseball. The moment players arrived, they noticed the difference. The clubhouses were smaller, the walkways were tighter, the sightlines felt unusual, everything felt different. Even veteran players admitted it was strange. For Dodgers players accustomed to enormous facilities and sold-out crowds, this felt almost surreal. Imagine being Shohei Ohtani, a global superstar, a player who fills stadiums wherever he goes. A player whose games are broadcast across Japan and watched by millions, and suddenly you're stepping into a ballpark that seats barely a fraction of the crowd that normally comes to see you play. Yet somehow that made the atmosphere even more interesting, because the stadium was small, every sound felt louder, every reaction felt bigger, every cheer echoed. Every crack of the bat seemed amplified. Fans were packed tightly together, many of them wearing Dodger blue. By first pitch, the energy felt completely different from a normal road game. And then the game started. At first, things looked calm. Almost too calm. The first inning moved quickly. No scoring. No drama. No signs of what was about to happen. Both teams seemed to be feeling out the ballpark. Feeling out the conditions. Feeling out the atmosphere. But then the second inning arrived. And everything changed. The Dodgers struck first. Not because of a towering home run. Not because of some incredible highlight. But because baseball is weird, Kyle Tucker hit a routine pop fly, the kind of ball that usually becomes an easy out. Except this one disappeared, literally. Athletics fielders lost sight of it in the sun. For a moment, nobody seemed completely sure where it was. The ball dropped untouched. Dodgers runners advanced. The inning stayed alive. And suddenly Los Angeles had an opportunity. That's baseball. Sometimes the biggest moments start with mistakes. The Dodgers took advantage. A couple of quality at-bats later and they were on the board. 2-0 Dodgers. Exactly the start everyone expected from the best team in baseball. But then something surprising happened. The Athletics punched back, hard. In the bottom half of the inning, Colby Thomas stepped into the batter's box. The young outfielder has shown flashes of talent throughout the season. And this time he delivered. A home run. The crowd erupted. Suddenly the Athletics had life. And they weren't done. 3 straight singles followed. One of them from rookie Joshua Kuroda, the first major league hit of his career. Imagine that moment. Years of dreaming. Years of grinding through the minors. And now your first big league hit comes against the Dodgers, against one of the best teams in baseball. The ball was immediately collected. Teammates congratulated him. The crowd cheered. And the Athletics suddenly found themselves ahead. 3-2. The tiny stadium exploded. Nobody expected that. Not against the Dodgers. Not against a team chasing another championship. For the first time all night, there was genuine tension, and that tension only grew because the Athletics weren't intimidated. They weren't backing down. Every inning felt competitive. Every at-bat mattered, and for a while the Dodgers looked vulnerable. That's what made this game so entertaining. It wasn't a blowout. It wasn't a routine victory. It was a fight. A real fight, and the Dodgers needed somebody to change the momentum. Somebody to remind everyone why they're the best team in baseball. That somebody ended up being Max Muncy. Top of the fourth inning, game tied, pressure building. Muncy stepped into the box. One swing later, the baseball was gone. Home run. His 17th of the season. The Dodgers had tied the game, and just like that, momentum started shifting. You could feel it. The deeper lineup, the championship experience, the relentless pressure. Los Angeles was beginning to take control, but they weren't finished, not even close. Because what happened next set the stage for the biggest moment of the entire night. Miguel Rojas doubled. The Dodgers kept hitting. The Athletics kept searching for answers. Then Andy Pages stepped up and absolutely crushed a 2-run homer. Just like that, the scoreboard changed again. From a 1-run deficit to a 2-run lead. 5-3 Dodgers. The momentum had completely flipped, and now everyone inside the stadium could feel something coming. The Dodgers lineup was rolling, the Athletics pitching staff was struggling, and lurking in the middle of it all was Shohei Ohtani, waiting, watching, preparing for a moment that would leave the entire stadium staring into the night sky. And when that moment finally arrived, nobody was ready for how far the baseball was about to travel. By the middle innings, something unusual was happening. The Dodgers were ahead. The offense was rolling. The Athletics were trying desperately to keep pace. But nobody in the stadium was really talking about the score anymore. Instead, all eyes kept drifting toward one player, Shohei Ohtani. Because even when Ohtani isn't directly involved in the action, he somehow becomes the center of attention. Every time he walks to the on-deck circle, cameras find him. Every time he picks up a bat, fans pull out their phones. Every time he steps into the batter's box, the entire atmosphere changes. You could feel it happening again in Sacramento. The crowd wasn't just watching a baseball game, they were waiting for a Shohei Ohtani moment. And eventually they got one. A huge one. The 6th inning began with the Dodgers already holding a comfortable lead. But comfortable leads can disappear quickly in baseball, especially in a small ballpark. Especially against a team with nothing to lose. The Athletics still believed they were in the game. Their fans still believed. The crowd still had energy. Then Ohtani stepped into the batter's box. And everything changed. Athletics reliever Matt Crooks stood on the mound. He knew exactly who he was facing. Every pitcher in baseball knows. There are difficult hitters. There are dangerous hitters. And then there is Shohei Ohtani. One mistake. One pitch left in the wrong spot. One tiny lapse in execution. That's all it takes. Crook got ahead in the count. For a brief moment, it looked like he might have the advantage. Then he threw a pitch that drifted into Ohtani's wheelhouse. And Ohtani unleashed. The sound came first. A crack so loud that people immediately stood up. Not because they saw where the ball was going, but because they heard it. Baseball players talk about certain sounds. The kind that tell you instantly that a ball is gone. This was one of those sounds. The kind that makes outfielders stop running. The kind that makes pitchers turn around slowly. The kind that causes fans to rise from their seats before the ball even reaches its highest point. The baseball rocketed into the night sky. Higher, higher, higher. People inside the stadium started pointing. Some simply stared. Others laughed. Because once the ball reached a certain height, it stopped looking real. It looked like something from a video game. The kind of home run where everyone knows exactly what they're witnessing. Pure power, pure violence, pure Shohei Ohtani. The ball traveled 432 feet. 432. Let that sink in. In the smallest stadium in Major League Baseball, in a ballpark where many people expected cheap home runs, Ohtani didn't hit a cheap home run. He hit the kind of home run that would have left every single stadium in baseball. Everyone. It landed beyond the bullpens, beyond where most fans were sitting, beyond where many players expected it to reach. Reporters immediately began describing it as one of the most impressive home runs hit in Sacramento all season. Some called it the loudest moment in the ballpark's brief MLB history. Others simply shook their heads. Because what else can you do? At some point, Ohtani stops making sense. You stop comparing him to current players. You stop comparing him to stars. You stop comparing him to MVPs. You start comparing him to history. And even then, the comparisons don't fully work. The 3-run blast pushed the Dodgers further ahead. The scoreboard changed. The crowd exploded. And Ohtani casually rounded the bases as if he had merely hit a routine single. That's another thing people always notice. The lack of celebration. The lack of theatrics. Most players would have admired that home run. Most players would have stared at it. Most players would have wanted everyone to know how far they had just hit the baseball. Not Ohtani, head down. Jog around the bases, back to the dugout, business as usual. Meanwhile, the rest of the stadium was still trying to process what had happened. Even television commentators couldn't hide their amazement. Replay after replay appeared on the screen. Every angle somehow looked more impressive than the last. The swing, the contact, the launch angle, the distance, everything about it screamed superstar. And here's what made it even crazier. This wasn't some random hot streak. This wasn't one lucky swing. This was becoming normal. That's the scary part. When Ohtani hits a baseball 432 feet, people react for a few minutes and then move on. Because he's done it before, and he'll probably do it again. Think about how absurd that is. A home run that would become the defining highlight of most players' careers barely qualifies as a surprising moment when Shohei Ohtani does it. That's how high the standard has become. And if you zoom out, the numbers become even more ridiculous. This blast was his 18th home run of the season, his 50th RBI, and it continued one of the hottest stretches in baseball. Since mid-May, Ohtani had been absolutely destroying opposing pitching. Batting average climbing, home run totals climbing, RBIs piling up. Every week seemed to bring another milestone. Another record. Another reminder that baseball had never really seen anything quite like this before. Because remember, this isn't just a hitter. This isn't just a slugger. This isn't Aaron Judge trying to hit 60 home runs. This isn't Juan Soto working counts and drawing walks. This isn't Freddie Freeman collecting doubles. This is a player doing all of those things while also pitching, while also striking out hitters, while also helping anchor a championship rotation. There are MVP candidates. There are Cy Young candidates. And then there is Shohei Ohtani somehow living in both conversations simultaneously. That reality hit everyone again after the home run. Because as impressive as the blast was, people immediately began talking about the bigger picture. What exactly are we witnessing? How do you evaluate a player who can dominate the game in so many different ways? How do you compare him to anybody? The answer is becoming increasingly simple. You don't. You appreciate it. Because history says players like this aren't supposed to exist. Yet here he was, standing in a tiny Sacramento ballpark, launching baseballs into the darkness, and making 14,000 people feel like they were watching something historic. The Athletics, to their credit, didn't quit. They kept battling. They kept fighting. They kept trying to claw their way back into the game. But the momentum had shifted permanently. You could feel it. The Dodgers smelled blood. The lineup kept producing. The pressure kept building. And suddenly the game stopped feeling competitive. It started feeling inevitable. The Athletics pitchers simply had no answer. Not for Ohtani. Not for Muncy. Not for Page, not for the relentless wave of hitters coming one after another. By the time the late innings arrived, the Dodgers' offense had completely taken over the night. And what happened next revealed why this team continues to look like the biggest threat in baseball. Because Ohtani's monster home run wasn't actually the whole story. Not even close. The real story was what the Dodgers lineup did from top to bottom. And hidden inside that offensive explosion was another storyline that nobody saw coming before first pitch. By the time Shohei Ohtani's home run finally disappeared from the conversation, something else became impossible to ignore. The Dodgers weren't winning because of one superstar. They were winning because the entire machine was working, and that's what should terrify the rest of Major League Baseball. Because while everyone was understandably focused on Ohtani's 432-foot missile into the Sacramento night sky, the rest of the Dodgers lineup was quietly putting together one of its most complete offensive performances of the season. When the final out was recorded, the box score looked almost unbelievable. 17 hits, 17, against a Major League pitching staff. On the road, in a strange ballpark, against a team that had actually taken the lead earlier in the game. This wasn't one player carrying a team. This was a championship lineup doing what championship lineups do. One hitter after another. One quality at bat after another. One rally after another. The pressure never stopped. And that's what makes the Dodgers so difficult to beat. Even when you survive Ohtani, even when you survive Freeman, even when you survive Betts, there's always somebody else waiting. Always another threat. Always another problem. The Athletics experienced that reality firsthand. Max Muncy launched his 17th home run of the season. Andy Pages added a 2-run blast. Miguel Rojas kept finding ways to get on base. The lineup simply refused to give opposing pitchers a break. And perhaps the most impressive statistic of the night wasn't Ohtani's home run distance. It wasn't the 17 total hits. It wasn't even the final score. It was this. 8 different Dodgers starters recorded at least 2 hits. Think about that. 8 different players. Most teams are thrilled when 2 or 3 hitters have a big night. The Dodgers nearly had their entire lineup producing simultaneously. That's the kind of offensive depth that wins championships. Because when everybody contributes, opposing teams run out of answers. Pitch around Ohtani? Fine. Freeman is waiting. Get through Freeman? Betts is next. Escape Betts? Muncy can hurt you. Handle Muncy? Pages might be the next guy to take you deep. There are no easy outs, no safe innings, no comfortable matchups. The lineup keeps coming. And on this particular night, the Athletics simply couldn't stop it. But hidden inside all those hits was another story. A story that didn't involve a home run, didn't involve a milestone, didn't involve a highlight reel moment. It involved a player who had spent the last month watching from the sidelines. Teoscar Hernandez. For weeks, Dodgers fans had waited for his return. Hamstring injuries can be tricky. One wrong step, one aggressive sprint, one rushed comeback, and suddenly you're back on the injured list. The Dodgers understood that. Teoscar understood that. Everyone understood that, which is why his return on this night felt important. Not just for him, for the entire team, and almost immediately, he put that hamstring to the test. Early in the game, Hernandez hit a ball that required him to run hard down the first baseline. No hesitation, no fear, no holding back. He sprinted. Full effort, exactly the way he would before the injury. Safe. Infield single. The Dodgers dugout loved it. The coaching staff loved it, and Hernandez probably loved it most of all, because that one play answered the biggest question. His body was ready. By the end of the night, Hernandez had collected 2 hits. Was it a perfect return? Not exactly. He also struck out 3 times, but nobody cared about that. What mattered was that he was back, healthy, moving well, contributing, and giving the Dodgers another dangerous bat for the second half of the season. That's bad news for the rest of baseball. Because if there's one thing the Dodgers didn't need, it was another weapon. Yet here they are, getting healthier, getting deeper, getting stronger, while already owning the best record in the sport. That's the scary part. This team doesn't look like it's slowing down. It looks like it's gearing up. And while the hitters grabbed most of the headlines, the pitching quietly handled its business too. Eric Lauer deserves a lot of credit for that. His night didn't begin perfectly. The Athletics scored early. They applied pressure. They made him work. But Lauer settled down. And sometimes that's all a team needs. Not dominance, not perfection, just stability. That's exactly what he provided. 6 innings, 3 runs allowed, 9 hits, nothing spectacular, nothing flashy, just enough. And that's the mark of a good veteran pitcher. Understanding that not every outing has to be brilliant. Sometimes your job is simply to keep your team in position to win. Lauer did exactly that. Then the bullpen took over. Kyle Hurt entered and immediately struck out the side. 1 inning, 3 strikeouts. No drama, no stress, just dominance. The Athletics tried to mount a late comeback. They managed to push across a couple of runs. For a brief moment, there was a little tension, a little uncertainty. But the Dodgers bullpen quickly slammed the door shut. Jonathan Hernandez handled his assignment. Jack Dreyer finished the job. Game over. Dodgers win. Again. And with every passing victory, another storyline continued growing larger. A storyline that almost nobody was talking about before the game started. Dave Roberts. Because while Shohei Ohtani was making headlines on the field, Roberts was quietly approaching one of the most significant milestones of his career. This victory pushed him to 999 career managerial wins. 999. One short of 1,000. One single victory away. Now, that number might not sound huge at first, until you realize how exclusive the club is. Only 3 managers in Dodgers history have ever reached 1,000 wins. 3. Walter Alston, Tommy Lasorda, Wilbert Robinson. That's it. Those aren't just respected names. Those are legendary names. Hall of Fame names. Franchise icon names. Names that helped define entire generations of Dodgers baseball. And now Dave Roberts stands 1 win away from joining them. That alone would be impressive. But what makes it even more remarkable is how quickly he got there. Roberts isn't just approaching 1,000 wins. He's approaching it faster than virtually any manager in baseball history. Think about all the success he's overseen. Division titles, National League pennants, World Series championships, 100-win seasons, MVP seasons, Cy Young seasons. And now another team that looks capable of making a deep October run. Roberts has become one of the defining figures of this era of Dodgers baseball. Not because he's loud. Not because he's controversial, but because he wins. Consistently, year after year, season after season. And now he sits 1 victory away from a milestone that once felt impossible. The funny thing is, Roberts himself rarely talks about personal achievements. Ask him about his own accomplishments and he'll usually redirect the conversation toward his players, toward the team, toward the organization. That's who he is. But even Roberts admitted this milestone means something, because it represents years of work, years of relationships, years of trust. Years of winning, and now one more victory separates him from history. It's almost poetic, really. The Dodgers entered the smallest stadium in Major League Baseball. A place nobody associates with history. A place that wasn't even built for Major League Baseball. And somehow that tiny ballpark ended up becoming the setting for one of the most memorable nights of the Dodgers season. Shohei Ohtani launched one of the longest home runs of his year. Teoscar Hernandez returned from injury. The offense exploded for 17 hits. The pitching staff got the job done. And Dave Roberts moved to the edge of a historic milestone. Not bad for a random Monday night. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson from this game. The Dodgers don't care where they're playing. Big stadium, small stadium, home, road, packed crowd, hostile crowd. None of it seems to matter. They just keep winning. That's what great teams do. And that's why the rest of baseball should be paying attention. Because this wasn't merely a 9-4 victory. This was another reminder of how dangerous the Dodgers have become. They're healthy. They're deep. They're experienced. They're confident. And they have the best player on the planet doing things that still don't feel real. Shohei Ohtani walked into the smallest stadium in Major League Baseball. Then he hit one of the biggest home runs of the entire season. The crowd stood. The commentators stared. The Athletics could only watch. And somewhere beyond the outfield fence, a baseball landed on a Sacramento hillside after traveling 432 feet through the night sky. Just another day in the life of Shohei Ohtani. Just another reminder that baseball history seems to follow him wherever he goes. And if this is what the Dodgers look like before the All-Star break, the rest of the league may have a very serious problem on its hands. Because Los Angeles isn't just winning. They're building momentum, they're building confidence, and they might be building another championship run. The smallest stadium in baseball got the biggest show imaginable. And Shohei Ohtani made sure nobody in attendance would ever forget it. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more Dodgers news, Ohtani updates, MLB highlights, and baseball stories from around the league. And let me know in the comments, was Ohtani's 432-foot blast the most impressive Dodgers home run of the season so far? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.